I would like to announce that parking validation and bus passes are now available for commission workshops and meetings. Anyone parking for this meeting or using the bus can pick up passes from security on their way out this evening. Those are valid for today only. I'd like to read the ethics reminder to the board. In accordance with the code of ethics adopted by the board, all county commissioners have a duty to obey all applicable laws regarding official actions, to uphold the integrity and independence of the office, to avoid impropriety in the exercise of official duties, to faithfully perform the duties of the office, and to conduct the affairs of the governing board in an open and public manner. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which would have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact for any board member? And does any board member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before the board today? I think I will note that we're going to be voting on the budget at the meeting this evening, and there are going to be a couple of items that some commissioners are going to be recused from voting on due to their service on certain nonprofit organizations in the community. So they're going to acknowledge those relationships and be recused from voting on those parts of the budget. Okay. Other than those items, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote on all matters voted on by the Board of Commissioners at our meeting this evening. All right. We come to the consent agenda. Commissioners, are there any questions about any items on the consent agenda? Does any member of the public have any question about any item on the consent agenda? All right, there is one budget amendment that we want to add to our agenda this evening. And can we make that the first item under new business? Okay, great. And we also wanted to, we're going to go ahead and do the presentations this evening right before the public comment. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, follow the remainder of the agenda as published, add the budget amendment, and to do the presentations right after approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, the first presentation is a proclamation recognizing Pride Month in Buncombe County, and Commissioner Jasmine Beach Ferrara will read the proclamation, and Drew Reisinger from the Buncombe County Register of Deeds is here with us on this item. Drew, thanks for being here.
Happy Pride Month to everyone. This proclamation recognizes 2024 Pride Month. Whereas the battle for dignity, equality, and personal safety for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning intersex and asexual people is reflected in the tireless commitment of the LGBTQIA+ community, as well as dedicated advocates and allies who strive to forge a more inclusive society. And whereas each year, the month of June honors the 1969 Stonewall riots at the Stonewall Inn in New York City, frequently referenced as the start of the modern LGBTQIA+ rights movement in the United States, now celebrated with Pride Month events nationwide. And whereas it is important to take time during this month to reflect on the LGBTQ+IA rights movement and important progress that has been made. And whereas 2024 marks the 10th anniversary of marriage equality in North Carolina, and the Buncombe County Register of Deeds has had the privilege to issue hundreds of marriage certificates to same-sex couples. And whereas more than 35,000 of our neighbors in Western North Carolina identify as LGBTQIA+, and whereas a recent survey at UNC Asheville revealed that a third of the students don't identify with conventional binary heterosexual stereotypes, and whereas LGBTQIA+ individuals across the United States, including those who live in our local community, continue to face hate and discrimination simply for being who they are and for who they love, and there remains much work to do to extend the promise of our country to every person. And whereas Buncombe County's non-discrimination ordinance enacts protections against discrimination and reflects the community's shared values of equality, inclusion, and fair access, and preserves the health, safety, and welfare of people without regard to certain actual or perceived status or characteristics. And whereas Buncombe County has recognized the importance of equity for all as a core value in their strategic plan. And whereas Buncombe County's BU LGBTQIA+ affinity group creates a space to share, honor, and celebrate the lived experiences of our LGBTQIA+ employees. And whereas, as an employer, Buncombe County has the responsibility to provide a safe and inclusive workplace for all employees and be a proud supporter and leader toward LGBTQI+ equity in Buncombe County. While there is more work to be done, we are moving forward in a spirit of unwavering commitment to the LGBTQIA+ community. Therefore, be it now resolved that we proclaim June 2024 as Pride Month in Buncombe County. Signed, Brownie Newman, Buncombe County Board of Commissioners Chairman.
Yeah, she does. Please do.
Will you come on up here? 42 years.
I just want to thank Jasmine and the Campaign for Southern Equality for more than 10 years ago providing a vehicle that we could work through that encompassed values that we believed in, because everybody deserves equality under the law. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
I just mentioned 42 years because I think it's pretty great, but we would not be here without Jasmine and Drew and a lot of other people who have worked for a lot more than 42 years all over the country to get us where we are today. And I'm just really happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Appreciate you. All right, the next presentation is a recognition of Stevens Lee High School Month, and Commissioner Al Whitesides will read the proclamation.
I have here with me 4 graduates from Stevens Lee, and it starts with Richard Bowman, class of what, 51? Yeah, and by the way, he just celebrated his 90th birthday in Paris. Still going strong. I'm going to be just like him, I hope. LaFrida Morris, and what year was you?
67.
67?
57.
57, and she's president of our Alumni Association. Sarah Weston Art. I always call you Weston, you know, I remember you. And Rita Waters, what class, what year?
66.
66. Now, these two, it was unfortunate because they weren't fully submerged. They didn't go there 4 years. But I think your diplomas did say Stevens Lee. That's good. Yeah. Well, let me read the proclamation. Stevens Lee High School Month, 100 years and still stepping. Whereas Stevens Lee High School, the castle on the hill, opened during the 1922-23 academic year, and the first graduation took place in 1924. And whereas from the moment it opened, the academic Gothic-style building became a center for Black culture, education, and athletics throughout the North Carolina mountains. And whereas the school drew students from throughout Buncombe, Madison, Yancey, and Transylvania counties, and represented a focal point and key source of pride for the extended African American community in the state's western region. And whereas class members agree that Stevens Lee was the only cultural outlet they had at the time, and it was made unique by the camaraderie they all shared. Families had very little, but made sure students got to school. It was a family affair with little or no division between the school and the community. And whereas Stevens Lee's graduates were proud of the school and its educational program, the school's famed marching band reflected this fierce pride. And whereas almost all the faculty had their master's degrees and some were working on their doctorates, which means students got the benefit of the latest in education. And whereas the final graduation took place in 1965, but the school legacy continues as its gym was converted to a community center in the 1970s and is still in use today. And whereas the Alumni Association has organized community outreach efforts, including oral history workshops for Asheville's youth, a forum celebrating an opening of the Stevens Lee Community Center, and a presentation at UNC Asheville, and many others. And whereas the Buncombe County Commissioners recognize the importance of Stevens Lee and its alumni continuing contributions to the community to this day, now therefore the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners hereby resolves and declares the month of July 2024 as Stevens Lee High School Month, this 18th day of June, 2024. Brian A. Newman, Chair, Buncombe County Board of Commissioners. And I might add, we had 41 classes to graduate from Stevens Lee during that time. And I'm a member of the 38th class, 1962. And as I said, we're still contributing to the community today, and hopefully we will be for some time to come. Because not only here on the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, but 3 of the councilmen on the city council are descendants of graduates of Stevens Lee. Would anybody like to say anything before I give you, Sarah? Mm-hmm. And I'll bring one frame for you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Like he said, that was the castle on the hill. And I was the one coming all the way from Mars Hill, North Carolina, all the way here. And that's the reason why it's so dear to me. Thank you, Mr. Whiteside. And I don't know where anyone else would have anything to say. This is just beautiful. And we are celebrating July the 5th, 6th, and 7th. And all the activities will be at Stevens Lee. So if you want to come by and say hello, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right, and then the last presentation is from the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team. And I think Rebecca Smith and Maggie Slocum are both here, and maybe with some others to help us out with this item. Thanks for being here.
Yes,
Yes, I don't know how we follow those two, though. Those were,
Good luck.
that was great. Yes, so I'm Rebecca Smith. My day job is I'm the Director of Social Work for Buncombe County Health and Human Services, but I also have the pleasure of being the chair of the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team. So I am here with a couple other members of our team, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Whitley English, and I am a survivor of intimate partner violence, and I founded my business because of what happened to me, WNC Gems.
Good evening, y'all. I'm Maggie Slocum. I'm the program director for Helpmate, where I've served for 10 years. It's an honor and privilege to be on this team where we're looking back at the worst day, the worst possible thing that could happen for a family, and to try and see what we as a community can do better. So thanks for prioritizing this work.
All right, so this evening's presentation is a little bit different than the ones that we've done over the last couple of years because this is our 3-year review. And thankfully, the information that we've been accumulating over the last 3 years and the 3 reviews has been put into a report that's going to be sent to the state. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about the trends that we've seen over the last 3 years. Can get the clicker to work. So first, we'll talk just a little bit about background and review domestic violence fatality review teams, what our purpose is, as well as some data related to domestic violence. And then we'll talk about the findings related to the review that we completed in 2023. Then we'll move into findings and recommendations from the 3-year timeframe. And then we'll end talking about some of the efforts that we've made to address some of the patterns that we've seen over the last 3 years, some of the coordinated community responses to these findings and recommendations. We can't start a conversation about domestic violence fatality without discussing the prevalence of intimate partner violence. IPV is common. Recent data shows that about 41% of women and 26% of men experienced intimate partner violence in their lifetime, including sexual violence, physical violence, psychological aggression, and stalking. The most common impacts reported include injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, symptoms, concerns for safety, fear, needing help from law enforcement, and missing at least 1 day of work. According to the CDC, intimate partner violence is a serious public health problem. In the United States, it can have profound impact on lifelong health, opportunity, and well-being. While the data on the screen shows that no domestic violence deaths happened in Buncombe County in 2022 and 3 occurred in 2023, the reviews we have completed and findings and recommendations we will make through this presentation will be based on deaths that occurred in previous years. And we work to ensure confidentiality of the reviews that we've completed. The mission of the Buncombe County Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team is to prevent domestic violence deaths, increase safety for domestic violence victims, and increase accountability for abusers through systems change. While we are working to prevent homicides, we want to keep in mind that our domestic violence fatality prevention team is a small fraction of the larger work that is happening. What we do on this team helps inform the rest of the work happening as part of the coordinated community response for domestic violence and sexual assault and state-level efforts. We can't talk about the specific case we reviewed, but we talk about the broader impacts of what happened. If there is anything we can do to prevent a tragedy like this from happening again, we should. DVFRT is made up of professionals from across multiple disciplines like law enforcement, survivor services, educators, medical and behavioral health professionals, and child protective services, as well as individuals with lived experience. Our team conducts 1 case per year, and a report is sent to the state every 3 years.
As a reminder, this death did not happen in 2023. The case took place before current interventions were available. If this was today, the case would look different. The interventions we have now are helping, and we'll go into more detail later in the presentation. These were our team's takeaways, what stood out to us over the next several slides. We will go over recommendations that result from these findings. From our 2023 review findings, extensive interactions with civil and criminal legal systems across multiple jurisdictions over 8 years. Civil complaints, temporary ex parte orders, and criminal charges, but no permanent orders or convictions. Used workplace power, legal knowledge, financial power, and community status to intimidate partners. Colleagues observed increasing paranoia, depression, and homicidal thoughts before the murder-suicide. While we felt it was important to identify these findings of the specific annual review based on what we saw in the particular case review, we will move to the additional findings based on the 3-year review and will share our recommendations based on the trends we saw across multiple reviews. High lethality indicators assess controlling behavior, violent jealousy, suicidality, spying, escalation to physical violence, and choking. No mental health services received despite court and child protective services interactions. History of substance misuse, but only alcohol tested in the autopsy. Nearly uninterrupted access to firearms despite multiple intimate partner complaints. Source of the handgun used in the murder unknown. Multiple bullet holes present in the home before the murder. The 3-year themes and findings, systems issues such as lack of information sharing and permanent protective orders, inadequate record sharing between jurisdictions, child protective services focus on victims, survivors, with perpetrators not being held accountable for their behavior, cases in which a firearm was used, the perpetrator had legal access. Community members did not report concerns or support victims. Perpetrators used finance to exercise power and control over victims. And the inequities, which I would like to name structural violence. It's the inequitable distribution of resources, which around poverty, race, education, and socioeconomic status have a significant impact on resources and opportunities.
Maybe not. What do you point this thing at? Okay, there we go. All right, sorry, y'all. All right, continuing our 3-year theme recommendations. As Whitley referenced, all of the perpetrators in the reviews used guns that were obtained legally. Gun violence is a national public health epidemic. We lose almost 4 lives every day in North Carolina to gun violence. Half of all suicides involve a firearm. The DVFRT recommends adopting legislation which provides additional avenues to limit access to firearms when there is a significant danger to that person poses to other people or to themselves. A previously proposed bill on this, which provided such a remedy, was North Carolina House Bill 525. Across reviews, we want to create, the recommendation has come up to create a multidisciplinary team. The collaboration between service providers and law enforcement and the DA's office happens often and frequently thanks to our co-locations at the courthouse and the FJC, but formalizing that into a team which brings high lethality indicating cases with actors to the table that can intervene both to hold the offender accountable and to support victims is our recommendation. Last, service providers nationally, over the 3 years that these reviews have happened, are facing dramatic funding crises due to the reduction of Victims of Crime Act funding. It's impacting our local service providers like Helpmate, PISCA, Our Voice, and it's important that our community continues to invest in survivor services. When a survivor attempts to flee abuse, ensuring that their support's robust enough to meet their practical needs like shelter, counseling, and legal support can break the cycle of abuse. Incorporating DV-informed survivor-centered services across systems which interact with survivors, with victims, is key to making sure that no door that someone walks through is the wrong door when they're experiencing abuse and trying to escape it. CPS's implementation of the Safe and Together model is an important example of this. It holds offenders accountable and it wraps support around the non-offending parent, the victim, and the children. And our final 3-year recommendation is supporting education and prevention efforts. This is how we get upstream of domestic violence homicides in our community, providing education to children and teens about healthy relationship dynamics, making sure that everyone in our community is able to recognize the signs of abuse, know how to get help for themselves and for their family and friends, will reduce future DV homicides. So moving from the recommendations to some of what our community has done with the recommendations and work around DVFRT, we'll talk a little bit about our coordinated community response. We've been presenting information from these reviews and utilizing it to inform actions at the CCR over the past several years. Our recommendations inform actions in each of the larger domains that you see in this graphic. Many initiatives, programming, and campaigns have come out of the CCR's efforts. Let's talk about some of those. Here are examples of initiatives that have flourished around community engagement from this work. The Enough and Still Standing campaigns got domestic violence and sexual assault awareness materials out in many locations across the county. Collaboration around U and T visas with Our Voice, PISCA, Helpmate, the Sheriff's Office, and SEMA help immigrant survivors of violence report, get help, and participate in the investigation of the crime without fear of deportation. Pathways to Prevention brought together Helpmate, Our Voice, and the Mountain Child Advocacy Center to provide age-appropriate, healthy relationship education to K-12 students. Community health workers through the Peace Team and Whitley's work at WNC GEMS is broadening our reach into communities and ensuring that folks with lived experience like Whitley are reaching our community members to meet their holistic needs. The Porch Light Project is the most recent initiative that's come out of this work, which will launch on July 1st in more than 60 locations across the county. These locations are libraries, gas stations, breweries, businesses, all sorts of places where a sign or a window cling is going to indicate to survivors that that location is a safe place, is participating in Porch Light, that they can ask for Porch Light, and that they'll be provided with a phone and a safe place to call either Our Voice or Helpmate to make a plan for their escape. Domestic violence is predicated on isolating the victim from help, and starting in July all across the county, there will be Porch Light locations where folks can immediately be connected to support.
I just want to reiterate what Maggie just said. I am so excited about the Porch Light Project, and it's seeing it to come to fruition and all the hard work that went into it, and knowing that people around the county who live in more rural areas, who don't live right in the center and have easy access to Family Justice Center, will have somewhere to go is just inspiring, and I just appreciate all the work that's been done in our community around the Porch Light Project. Also want to talk a little bit about high-risk interventions and the difference that the lethality assessment protocol has made in law enforcement being able to complete danger assessments while in the field and inform the supports that are needed for victims and for perpetrators. Danger assessments being completed. Helpmate has administered over 1,000 danger assessments, 58% of which have indicated the highest level of extreme danger for the survivor, and that has helped to inform interventions that were needed. And then, of course, our own team, Domestic Violence Fatality Review Team, and the recommendations that we've been able to make. In the category of offender accountability, the Domestic Violence Intervention Program at Spark, specialized prosecution and law enforcement units have been formed, including a trauma-informed legal assistant in the DA's office. And then the perpetrator pattern-based behavior framework that is Safe and Together model, which is a national model, and Buncombe County is lucky enough to have implemented this model across our Child Protective Services teams to ensure that what happened in the fatality that we reviewed in 2023 does not happen again. Making sure that we are holding perpetrators accountable as fathers to their children, as parents, making sure that they're not able to just disappear until our case is closed, and then they come back into the picture. Really putting plans in place to hold them accountable as parents. And then we also launched the Choose to Change campaign, which allows fathers to develop their own plan for people in the community that they can contact when they're in a place of needing support and help to prevent them from choosing violence.
Hey, we'll talk a little bit about some of the intervention work that's happening at the Family Justice Center. So the numbers you're seeing here are intake services that were provided in 2023. So this is 567 folks that came to seek help for the first time in our community. This number is definitely on the rise in 2024. I can tell you anecdotally, as somebody that works there, the dens are full all the time. We're in overflow spaces. We're regularly having to kick people out of offices to meet with survivors. Intakes are just the beginning of the story for someone seeking freedom from abuse. Helpmate worked with 3,151 survivors in 2023 to form 15,297 personalized safety plans. Here's some additional partner data looking at the intervention work of victim service providers at the Family Justice Center. You'll see strong rates of polyvictimization, so someone's experiencing not just domestic violence, but sexual assault, stalking, cyber stalking. And you'll also see that our special populations, which in this circumstance is defined as deaf or hard of hearing, homeless, immigrants, LGBTQ folks, veterans, and victims with disabilities, are coming to us for help at much higher rates than the population reflects. And last but not least, our forensic nurses. Mission forensic nurses have really doubled their efforts in providing sexual assault kits, forensic photography, and aftercare to victims. Between both the FJC location and the Mission Hospital location, they have increased the number of folks that they see from 10 to 20 people a month to 130 to 150 patients per month. This final statistic from me is just the collaborative work of all of the FJC partners. So 144,415 services provided in this year, in 2023, to 12,429 victims.
So what's next? For the next 3 years, our focus will be on leveraging increased staffing capacity as recommended in the fiscal year 25 budget to implement DVFRT recommendations such as the multidisciplinary team, promotion of the Porch Light Project, and other community campaigns to help people recognize danger signs of intimate partner violence. We'll continue the implementation of the Safe and Together model in Child Protective Services to increase accountability for perpetrators and their impact on child safety and well-being. And we'll have increased impact through the work of our community health violence prevention professionals and other individuals with lived experience.
We are grateful to be able to share this information with you today because we know that domestic violence thrives in the shadows. While these conversations can be uncomfortable, it is important that we have them so that Buncombe County can continue to eliminate domestic violence from our communities and interrupt intergenerational trauma. We have that opportunity, and we appreciate your support and the broader community's support in creating a safe and healthy community where all residents thrive. As a survivor, I would like to say that the work of the community health workers and violence prevention is very, very vital. A lot of victims are scared to approach agencies and law enforcement because we have been wrong. Well, for me in my situation, there was many, many holes and many, many cracks. And so this work that I'm doing in this community, it has to propel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all for being here this evening and for sharing these important updates about this ongoing work. Thank you so much. All right, commissioners. We are now come to public comment. So there are several folks that have signed up for public comment. I'll go through the list of everyone who's signed up. And when I call your name, just come up to the podium. Everyone will have up to 3 minutes to speak during public comment. There'll be an orange light that goes off when you have about 30 seconds left, and a red light will go off when the time's up. We do ask that you discontinue your public comments once your time's up, because we want to give everyone the same amount of time. And once I've gone through the list of folks who have signed up, if anyone else would like to speak during public comment, there'll be an opportunity to do so. So anybody who would like to speak will have a chance. All right, the first person that signed up is Matt Allen.
Evening. Good to see you all. My name is Matt Allen. I'm the Director of Professional Development and Government Affairs at the Land of the Sky Association of Realtors. We represent over 2,100 members across 3 counties. Most of them are in Buncombe County. And I'm just here tonight to make brief comment on the County Planning Department and Planning Board's work earlier this year on possible short-term rental regulations. As you all know, on April 22nd, the Planning Board voted to defer consideration of any new rules or regulations for 100 days. And as a part of that discussion, several of the Planning Board members expressed interest in convening a task force to various stakeholders and other community members to look at a possible compromise ordinance, for lack of a better term. It's now been 2 months, and despite outreach by our organization, other stakeholders, we haven't heard anything about any next steps during this 100-day deferral period. If the Planning Department and Planning Board have officially decided to table this first module and move on to Module 2, that's something we certainly advocated for early on. That'd be fine. In the alternative, creating the task force that the Planning Board mentioned and our organization being a part of it to craft common sense regulations is certainly something we're very interested in. What we don't want to see is the 100 days comes and goes and the Planning Board gets together and just says, oh, let's just pass what was on the table back in April. Despite a lot of admirable work by the Planning Board and the Planning Department, still a lot of issues with that proposal, as is a lot of likely negative unintended consequences. And that's why we want to sit down with other stakeholders and come up with some reasonable regulations that won't unduly impact folks' private property rights. So I guess the ask is, since the silence on the issue is starting to become a little concerning, as an organization representing thousands of people, members and their clients who have a great interest in this issue, we would love to be involved in next steps sooner rather than later. So thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. All right, next is Soren Peterson.
Hello, Commissioners. I wanted to start by briefly addressing 2 facts. The first one is on the question of a living wage for teachers, for school staff, and for county staff. Addressing living wage is not something that can be solved in a day. It is something that's going to require a longer-term solution than just looking at how we can make modifications around the edges of our current budget. Second, I think it's absolutely a fact that the delinquency of the state's General Assembly, that the General Assembly has exhibited on public education, is absolutely disgraceful. However, that disgrace only means that there's a greater responsibility for the county commission to take up the cause of making sure that our teachers and school staff are paid adequately. However, here are some other facts. In their annual report on the median cost of rent on a 1-bedroom apartment in Buncombe County, that is the average housing price for a single working person, the Department of Housing and Urban Development found that rent increased in Buncombe County by $208 a month between 2023 and 2024. That's $2,496 a year. For many public employees who are paid hourly by the county for the work they do for the county, that means that the cost of living increase in the proposed budget does not actually even cover the increase in median rent that they will be expected to pay. As such, I want to make a recommendation, a concrete recommendation, not a hypothetical, longer-term solution, but something that would actually impact people's lives in the moment. And that is to make sure that no employee of the county is making less than $18.11 an hour. In the current proposal for the 2025 fiscal year budget, there are 21 employees in the 2001 grade wage level that have a starting income of $17.17 an hour. And what that number means in practical terms is that those employees will be paying 53% of their pre-tax income towards renting a one-bedroom apartment. By increasing that to $18.11 an hour and making sure that no employee working for the county is making less than that amount, that means that every single employee will at most be paying half of their income towards housing in our county. That would bring them from severely cost burdened down to only in quotes, cost burdened. This would be a concrete step. From what I can find, it impacts 21 employees. There might need to be some compression on the sides, but I ask that you consider potentially in some longer term making a budget amendment to increase that base wage to $18.11. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Soren. Thanks for being here. David Greason.
Hey, folks.
Hey, good.
It's good to be back with you again. I've taken to watching you mostly on video, but you look much better in living color, so I'm glad to be here. And I also want to say how fortunate I feel to live in Buncombe County, where when we talk about issues of racial equity, we're not talking about whether it's important, because all of you all know it's important, and it's in your strategic plan, and you have a racial equity action plan. And so we can start at the very fortunate place of saying, how do we do this, not whether we should do this. And when we all know it's not easy to do, it's not a turnkey kind of thing. But I do think we can take a lot from the Cease the Harm audit that you all received a number of months ago. And one of the things that they really zeroed in on is so crucial is the importance of tracking data consistently so that we can measure how much progress we're making in all the different programs that you all oversee. And there are a couple examples in your agenda tonight that I see as opportunities for moving more in this direction. So you're going to hear about the COVID recovery funds, and it's a beautiful report. All kinds of jobs created, thousands of people getting mental health services. It's beautiful, great work, but it doesn't have any sort of breakdown as to who received these services. And so therefore it's hard for you or for those of us in the public to say, are we moving on racial equity with this issue? Are we reaching, who are we reaching? Who's getting these jobs? And again, it's just data. It helps us understand where we are so we can move forward. Similarly, you have a few nominations for boards and commissions. In your racial equity action plan, you've named the importance of diversifying these boards and commissions. But we don't know what the current demographics are of your boards and commissions, and every time you have new folks, it just has their names. The city, they put the application in their agenda document so you can see who are these people, what racial identity do they have. So I would just encourage you all, I think that changing the culture to data-driven is also not easy, just like addressing racial equity. But there are small steps, there are small opportunities that we have. So I would invite you, when Ms. Sawyer is up here later talking about this amazing COVID recovery fund, let's ask, is there any breakdown? Did we collect data on race to see how Black and brown folks were impacted by this program differently than anybody else? And if we didn't, why don't we track that this year? And if we did track it, why don't we include it in the report or have some publicity around that? And likewise, with the boards and commissions thing, I think that it's not a difficult step to include a little more information about your nominees, or to have someplace on the Buncombe County website where it shows what progress are we making towards diversifying these boards and commissions. Again, not easy, but we can't move forward unless we know where we are and we're tracking that data. So I probably will end up watching most of the rest of this on video. I hope that I will see you guys asking some of those questions later, and thanks so much again for listening to me.
Thank you, David. Thanks for being here. All right, that's everyone that signed up. Are there any other folks who would like to speak during public comment? All right, thank you to everyone who took time to come out. We really appreciate it. Okay, commissioners, the next item on the agenda. Are there any items on the county manager's report?
Yes, sir. I do want to take this moment to introduce our newest department head. Oscar Wooten IV is a North Carolina native and has extensive background in public service. He has worked in leadership capacities in law enforcement as well as security after a long period of military service. As an Army veteran, Oscar has served his country around the world as a military policeman and aviation crew chief. Oscar is considered an industry advisor in aviation security and recognized as a member of the National Safe Skies Alliance. Oscar has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Gardner-Webb University, a graduate certificate in paralegal studies from Duke University, and a master's degree in public safety leadership and administration from Arizona State University. Oscar joins Buncombe County after working for more than 10 years as an operations supervisor for the Charlotte Douglas International Airport. As an Army veteran, he brings extensive military and law enforcement experience to the county's ID Bureau, noting it is a natural extension of his previous work. Please join me in welcoming Oscar to the county.
Hey, welcome, Oscar. Glad to have you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the county commissioner and assistant county commissioner for affording me this opportunity to oversee the Identification Bureau. I'd like to thank also Ms. Freeman, who, as mild-mannered as she is, has done a fabulous job in leading this organization for the last 30 years. And I really want to make sure that she's recognized as she leaves her service with the county. I appreciate being invited to come before the commission today. I think it's important that you all understand that my mission is not to do a whole lot different, but to uphold the standards of respect, integrity, collaboration, as well as honesty, and most of all, equity, as we look to move forward and do what we need to do and take small opportunities to take advantage of things that I see that maybe need to be improved in the process. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope I can serve you well.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you joining the team.
Thanks, Oscar. We'll make sure he knows I'm a manager, not a commissioner.
All right, Avril, any other items?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so we come to new business, and let's take up the budget amendment item that we added first.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this budget amendment is one of our end-of-year cleanup budget amendments. Our representative payee fund is intergovernmental revenue received from the federal government and dispersed to trust accounts and to children in custody. This does not involve its pass-through revenue. However, we set the budget at the beginning of the year for this fund, and we realized today that it's going over budget for the first time. So we need to increase the budget. And again, there's no county funds required. So we're asking to increase that budget by $60,000 to make sure that we process all those transactions without going over budget.
Motion to approve.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, and so now we come to the consideration of the FY 2025 budget adoption.
I believe, sir, you skipped the reallocation of COVID
Whoops,
recovery.
thank
funds.
you. Authorizing the reallocations of COVID recovery funds. And Tyler Henry's here to help us out.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So just going to provide a quick update on the progress and impact of these fundings thus far, as well as the RBA to reallocate some of the funding. So this is just a quick reminder about the specific funding source. It was established by the American Rescue Plan Act and provided direct, flexible funding from Treasury to municipalities. And Buncombe County's allocation was $50.7 million. Members of the public can access information about this funding and how it's being spent on our website, and it's can be found at buncombecounty.org/recovery funding. There they can find information such as timelines, survey results, community listening sessions, award information, and performance reports as well. Also on the website is an interactive and drillable dashboard where people can see a breakdown of funding by category and individual project breakdowns as well. We also post project spotlights on the site, which summarizes the activities and impact of a project once it's completed. As of the date of this briefing or this meeting, we have 19 completed projects and project spotlights available for the public to view. So here are some results of the impact so far, and this is actuals reported as of April 2024, so this is activity through the third quarter of this fiscal year, and we expect these figures to continue to increase. So as you see, we have over 105,000 individuals, households, and small businesses served, and as well, this is also a collective of progress through all of our projects thus far. Here's some more excuse me, here's some more results as of the impact of the funding thus far. Now for the proposed project reallocations, so we have decreasing the Reimagining DVP Phase 1 project. So this contract was canceled as a result of a communication that we received from the Housing Authority of the City of Asheville that notified us that the project was not moving forward in its current iteration at this time. Reducing broadband infrastructure expansion by $1 million. So staff has determined that this project could reallocate funds due to NCDIT recommended changes to the state funding formulas for broadband. An increase to the Community Paramedic Collaborative project of $514,000. This additional funding will allow for 4 positions to be extended to June 30th, 2026 from their original expiration date of December 31st of this calendar year. We'll also provide $30,000 to mobile command center costs. And then finally, the creation of the capital outlay equipment project, just over $1.4 million. So the creation of this project will alleviate financial pressure on the FY 2025 general fund budget to offset capital outlay expenses as part of the revenue replacement expenditure category. The funds will be providing capital outlay equipment to emergency services, general services, and recreation to purchase equipment such as stretcher systems, heart monitors, ventilators, idle mitigations, electric forklifts, and park entry signage. So again, reducing those 2 projects of Reimagining DRV Phase 1 and the broadband infrastructure project will increase the amount available of funds to just over $1.9 million. And the increase in the Community Paramedic Collaborative project, as well as the creation of the capital outlay equipment project, will allow those 2 projects to fully use those reduced funds. And that will reduce all of the funding thus far. Are there any questions?
I have a question, and I may have just misunderstood you. How many projects out of the 50 did you say are complete?
19.
19, okay, I did. And so are we tracking, so those that are not complete, are we on schedule to get those completed in time?
Yes, so all projects have to be completed by the end of 2026. And each individual project will have its own period of performance end date. And what we do as we get closer to that end date, we are monitoring their activity, their spending, and constantly communicating with them on a monthly basis and checking in to see if they have any needs to extend the program or if they will be able to spend out the funds in time by the end.
Okay, so out of those, you feel like we're tracking pretty well and we're on schedule for those to be able to be completed?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the reallocations. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, now we come to the FY 2025 budget adoption.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before we begin, I will ask Attorney Michael Frew to discuss General Statute 14234.3.
Commissioners, each of you is a public official being elected to serve on the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners. A few years ago, the General Assembly passed a new provision in the general statutes which prohibits public official from knowingly participating in the making or administering of any contract, including an appropriation with any nonprofit with which the official is associated. I have discussed this requirement with each of the commissioners. I've identified 3 nonprofit entities which are tasked to receive funding, which will require recusals. And we'll do that at the end of the presentation. But those 3 items or nonprofits are the Economic Development Coalition, Open Doors of Asheville, and Asheville Area Arts Council, doing business as Arts Asheville. And we'll go through the motion process here shortly.
So we are here tonight for the fiscal year 2025 budget adoption. We began our work in November 2023, 7 months ago, with the budget retreat for fiscal year 2025. We completed 3 work sessions this spring and presented a recommended budget on May 21st, with the required public hearing on June 6th. Therefore, we are requesting adoption of the budget this evening. During this budget planning season, we have projected minimal increases in revenue, with the unrestricted revenue rate coming in at a modest 3.52% increase, while losses in sales tax and intergovernmental revenue have generated only a 1.3% increase in revenues in the general fund. We have increased debt payments and retirement costs passed on from the state, which cannot be avoided. Inflation over the last 4 years means the same goods and services cost us more money, an average of 20% more since 2020. Our prior year contributions to K-12 education above natural revenue growth have created obligations for which there is no revenue to match. Other local governments we have consulted with have seen similar challenges in shrinking revenues and increased costs, with at least 5 counties responding with a tax rate increase independent of a reevaluation this year. As was discussed with the county manager, recommend the fiscal year 25 budget. This budget is a continuation of services budget with $4 million of operating cuts as well as deferred capital. The budget we bring you tonight recommends a tax rate increase of 1.96 cents per $100 of assessed value. With feedback from the Board of Commissioners to reduce the tax rate change, there have been a few changes to the budget recommended to you since the public hearing 2 weeks ago. We have additional lease revenue and increases in local intergovernmental revenue for about $295,000 in additional revenue. After Wednesday's announcement by the Federal Reserve that they would cut interest rates no more than once for the remainder of the year, we increased our investment earnings revenue budget by $1 million. After an adjustment of appropriated fund balance, these changes result in $1,273,560 in additional revenue. On the expenditure side, we are accommodating ABTEC's request for additional funding after their RFP for janitorial services for $300,000. We have reassessed vehicle needs and reduced anticipated leasing costs. With the recent allocation to affordable housing projects and remaining general obligation bonds, we are reducing the annual transfer to affordable housing by $2 million. Finally, we will realize one-time rebate revenue in the Capital Projects Fund and eliminate the need for a pay-go transfer to that fund this year. These changes result in a reduction of expenditures by $1,880,123. Overall, this creates a net change of $3.15 million, which allows for a 0.59 cent reduction in the tax rate that was recommended on May 21st. Amongst other annual funds, we had one change in another annual fund, with the inmate commissary fund increasing in total by $3,579. All other annual funds remain unchanged. The fiscal year 25 general fund budget is now $440,025,235. The property tax rate for 2025 will increase by 1.96 cents to 51.76 cents per $100 of appraised value, generating $10.5 million of additional property tax revenue. This would result in an annual increase of $78.40 on a home valued at $400,000. Of this increase, 1.21 cents will contribute to funding county operations, and 0.75 cents will fund this year's increase to the K-12 school system's local current expense. An appropriation of unrestricted fund balance in the amount of $11.8 million will balance this budget per general statute, leaving an estimated 14.8% of unrestricted fund balance remaining in the general fund. The Local Government Commission recommends at least 8% of budgeted expenditures of unrestricted fund balance remaining, and our policy calls for a minimum of 15% with a plan to replenish if dipping below that amount. With this tax rate change, revenues are now budgeted at $428.3 million, with property tax the largest revenue source at 65%, followed by intergovernmental revenue and sales tax each at 11%. These three revenue sources make up 87% of the general fund revenues for fiscal year 25. Education remains the largest expenditure by function in the general fund, now up to 29%. Public safety increases 5% and makes up 22% of the general fund. Human services remains relatively flat and is also 22% of the general fund. All told, expenditures in this budget increase 0.7% over the fiscal year 24 amended budget. The fiscal year 25 recommended new positions remain unchanged since May 21st, with 30 new positions in the general fund and 3 in the solid waste enterprise fund. Per the personnel ordinance, this budget includes a cost of living adjustment increase for county employees of the 2-year average of the Consumer Price Index for fiscal year 25. This results in an increase of 4.89%. This is a 6-year look back at K-12 education funding for local current expense for the 2 school systems. As a reminder, the unrestricted revenue growth rate was the basis the county developed for use in fiscal year 19 for the annual appropriation needed for our public school systems. This was intended to be a sustainable method of funding education without needing to find alternate revenue sources. As the board has received education requests over this period, you see in that 5 of the past 6 years, a funding allocation was made in excess of that rate as the commissioners attempted to meet the needs of the schools left unfunded by the state. Over that time, this has resulted in $19.9 million of school funding, with 1 penny of property tax revenue added last year for education funding. This means that $14.8 million allocated to schools continues to be in the annual expense and does not have any designated revenue to offset. Continuing to fund at this level is unsustainable. In fact, dedicated revenue to offset this increase would take a 2.77 cent tax rate increase. Both K-12 school systems receive an increase to local current expense equivalent to the unrestricted revenue growth rate of 3.52%, split by statute by the average daily membership ratio. This results in a total increase to K-12 schools to $3.99 million to be funded by the tax rate increase of 0.75 cents per $100 of assessed value, and will maintain a sustainable change to education funding. As discussed before, we are funding AB Tech with an increase equivalent to the unrestricted revenue growth rate plus $300,000 for their new janitorial contract. This budget provides $6.4 million directly to community investments while supporting an additional $2.3 million of other funding for the community through grant matches or pass-throughs. One change has been made to debt-funded projects since public hearing. The $4.25 million allocation for solar on schools and public buildings has been removed as all identified projects have been completed at this time. This brings the total budget of debt-funded projects to $21 million. A reminder that there will be no impact on the general fund budget for these projects in fiscal year '25. Capital pay-go projects remain unchanged. However, we will realize one-time revenue in the capital projects fund that will eliminate the need for the $153,000 transfer that was recommended previously. Regarding the taxing districts, this budget recommends 2 tax increases for fire districts. Fairview from 14.5 to 16 cents, and North Buncombe from 10.77 to 12.27 cents per $100 of assessed value. Primary drivers for increases include major maintenance to facilities and equipment and staffing. There are 2 budget ordinances requiring adoption. The first is the annual funds ordinance, which establishes the annual budget for all annual funds as well and includes the adoption of the fiscal year 2025 fee schedule, the Health and Human Services billing guide, and the position classification and pay plan. These documents are posted with the agenda. Per the MOA with the state, there is a resolution for budgeting strategies in the opioid settlement fund. The second ordinance is the Capital Projects Fund Ordinance. This makes updates to the multi-year funds to align with any appropriations from the annual funds and to establish recommended capital projects. The requested action from the board is to approve the 2 ordinances in the resolution. Are there any questions?
I don't think so at this time.
So with that, Mr. Frew can ask for votes on recusals, and we can follow with a motion on the adoption of the fiscal year 2025 budget.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the idea here is for the 3 identified nonprofit entities that are pegged at this point as proposed for funding, that the board would make a motion to recuse the public officials involved. That'd be Commissioner Whiteside for the Economic Development Coalition, Commissioner Moore on both the Asheville Area Arts Council and Open Doors of Asheville. So for each of these, there'd be a motion to recuse the individual commissioner. That would be voted on as deemed necessary and appropriate by each commissioner. And then there'd be a motion to approve the item in the budget, and that recused commissioner would not vote on that item at that time. Then when the board takes up the entire budget, it'd be with the understanding that these 3 items had already been approved or not, depending on your pleasure. So I know Commissioner Parker Sloan is primed and ready to make the first motion.
One at a time, right, Mr. Frew?
Yes, please.
Okay. So in accordance with GS 14-234.3, I'll move to recuse Commissioner Whitesides from voting on the $450,000 grant to the Asheville-Buncombe County Economic Development Coalition due to the conflict of interest there. That's my motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And then I think it's appropriate next year to move to approve the $450,000 grant to the Asheville-Buncombe EDC.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
I'll make another motion in accordance with that statute. Move to recuse Commissioner Moore for voting on a $356,000 grant to Open Doors of Asheville Incorporated due to the conflict of interest.
Is that the right amount?
$356,000 is what I have here.
It is there's 2 grants going to them, one for strategic partnerships.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I will then make a motion to approve the $356,000 grant to the Open Doors of Asheville, Inc.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Also, in accordance with GS 14-234.3, I will move to recuse Commissioner Moore from voting on the $129,788 grant to the Asheville Area Arts Council due to that conflict of interest.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Last vote here, Mr. Chairman, I'll also move to approve that $129,788 grant to the Asheville Area Arts Council, doing business as Arts Asheville.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And so there are three different, well, two different ordinances and a resolution that now need to be voted on.
Yes.
All right, Commissioners, any other discussion or questions? All right. I will make a motion to approve the annual funds ordinance as outlined in the agenda. All right, further discussion? Okay, I'll just make a couple of comments. I've been through, a lot of different budget retreats in my day. And in a lot of ways, it's probably the toughest budget like I've worked on, and there's been other, I don't know, there have been some other really tough ones too. They're all tough in their own ways because there's always more needs than we have resources to address them. So we have to make tough decisions with ultimately finite resources, even if we are in a year where the commissioners decide to increase the tax rate, which is always a very difficult decision because it affects a lot of people who are struggling in the community, right? It's not just like affecting tourists or the wealthiest folks in our community. It affects like everyone in a real way. So, so they're always tough decisions, but this was a tough one. We've been coming through an era of where cost of living has really gone up on a lot of throughout our economy. Cost of housing is going up. Cost of everyday goods is going up. So, and the cost of labor goes up. And we're mostly an organization made up of people, right? Like our biggest investments are in our people who work for Buncombe County. And our policy is that in addition to other benefits they will get, we will do a cost of living adjustment every year. And that's not something that we are required to do, but it's our goal to do that. And I think I can't remember not doing that. It's always a priority. But when you go through 2 years of the largest cost of living increases that we've seen in, many decades for sure, that becomes a really big obligation. And when that happens and your revenues suddenly are really flat, the combination of those two things creates a real challenge. So those are certainly some of the big drivers in our budget this year. But I'm really happy that the county is sticking with our policy, that we are following through on our commitment to provide the cost of living provision as part of this budget. It's certainly a significant driver in needing to adjust the tax rate to fulfill that commitment, but I think it's the right thing to do. The other thing that is not just part of our budget this year, but is part of what we've been working on over the last couple of years, and thanks to support from the voters, the county has really stepped up in a very significant way our investments in addressing what I think most of us consider to be the single biggest economic challenge facing our community, which is the crisis we have in scarcity of affordable housing. And so thanks to the support of the voters last year who approved a $40 million affordable housing bond, the county has been working hard with partners in the affordable housing community to support the development of a really robust pipeline of new projects that are coming forward. We've got an affordable housing subcommittee. We've gotten some updates at our most recent meetings around what that pipeline of projects looks like. And and we'll be talking about that in more detail at one of the upcoming county commission meetings as well. But the short version is that as a result of these bonds, we are going to, triple the number of new affordable homes that are built in Buncombe County each year over the next several years. We've committed to building up to 1,800 new affordable apartments in Buncombe County by the year 2030, which is, again, would require probably tripling the number of new affordable homes built compared to before we adopted this policy and passed the bonds. And we are on track to meet that really aggressive, ambitious goal. And there's a lot more that we're going to have to do between now and then. But I think that, this is one of these issues that as long as, I've lived in Buncombe County since the early 1990s. So the whole time I've been here, this is one of these issues where it just seems like it just gets worse and worse every year. And I think there's kind of this concern that it'll always be that way. It's just going to get worse and worse. But I think we are now recognizing that we have strategies that can really, where that doesn't have to be the case, where we can make this issue. We're not going to solve it overnight. It's going to take a long-term commitment to this. But we really can turn this issue around, and over time it can get better and better. So I'm excited that the county is part of these strategies that are really changing the outlook for people being able to make sure the people who work in Buncombe County can be able to afford to live here without having to pay 40%, 50% of their income towards their housing needs. It's also really exciting to see these incredible projects coming out, also thanks to the voters of Buncombe County, to support the protection and conservation of family farms and natural areas in Buncombe County as a result of the conservation bonds that were also approved. We saw some updates at our last county commission meeting about several new projects that are being brought forward that will preserve in perpetuity, hundreds of acres of some of the most beautiful areas in Buncombe County, keep them in working agricultural lands and protecting rivers and forests for forever. So these are things people really care about, and it's exciting to see great projects happening to make that really happen. I'm also really excited to see that in this tough budget environment, the county continues to make important new investments to expand our investments into emergency services and public safety in Buncombe County. So I want to thank everyone who works to help make Buncombe County a safe place for everyone every day. And I want to really appreciate all of the folks who work in our teams to do that work and to also continue to bring forward ideas for how we continue to improve that in this rapidly growing community we have that has changing needs and growing needs in those areas. And the last thing I would mention is, again, in a tough budget environment where you have to sort of look at everything, I'm pleased that we're also protecting our investments, which we have been growing, but now we are able to sustain in pre-K and early childhood education. So I'm glad we're keeping those commitments intact. I think they're making a huge difference, and it's also just another vastly growing need in the community where we would love to be doing more. This is not a year where we're able to do a lot of expansion, but I'm really pleased we're able to keep the commitments we've built up to the state. So and I want to thank everyone on the staff, John, Avril, everyone on all of your teams, and Melissa, everyone who's helped throughout the organization to help us understand the issues, do the analysis, and help us get to this evening. All right, any other questions or comments?
Ronnie?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to add, I echo most of what you said, I agree with. But one of the concerns I have, this is my 8th budget, and I agree, this is the most difficult. But folks, I've spent 24 years on school boards in this state, 16 on university boards, and 8 on the public school board. One of the concerns I have, and I'm really speaking to the educators in the room too, is that we know what's happening in Raleigh. And it's not, let's face it, unless you're a magician down there, I don't know what they're thinking when it comes to education. But we can't continue to wait till May, even though we won't have some of the figures until then from Raleigh. But we've got to start looking at education here year-round. We've got to do a better job of looking at it. And when I say a better job, we've got to get more help from the educators if we're going to help them. Because what we're doing now, the model, is not working. And it's not fair when you look at 30% of our budget almost is going to education. We've got to be fair because we have the whole county to take care of, where it's public safety and go on and on. But this is something that we can't just continue to ignore. We've got to do something different because it's not fair to our kids, it's not fair to our families. But in order to correct the ship, we're going to have to make some hard decisions on education and what we do going forward. Because like I said, what we're doing now is not working. We are giving all that we can give when you look at our budget. But let's face it, I think we need to look ahead to the future and how we do this because it's important. Because what we're doing now is definitely not working, and it's not going to get any better unless we put our arms around it. And unfortunately, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And this is something we've got to think about going forward. Thanks.
I think it's a painful one. It's always hard to feel like you're coming up short in some areas, and this is a really difficult year, as you named, Brownie. I think would not be the first person to say this. I know it's come up before, but a multi-year funding strategy for how we deal with education seems really important at this point. The year-by-year thing is not reflecting, I think, the best way we could go about it. So I'd look forward to having that conversation and the meetings that it's going to take to make sure that we create a long-term funding plan for our schools.
All right. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I think sorry, I just remember I made one, but then I started talking, so I forgot. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the annual funds ordinance, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I'll make a motion to approve the capital funds ordinance.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And lastly is the opioid settlement fund resolution. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, the next item is consent to hire Rob Hartman as Internal Audit Director.
Good evening. I'm Caroline Long, Recruiting Manager for Buncombe County. I'm here tonight regarding the appointment for the vacant Internal Audit Director position. For some background context for you all, This position became vacant in July of 2023, and at that time, the county engaged with recruiting consultant company Reftelis. And the search concluded in November of 2023 with no successful offer of employment to any candidate at that time. Reftelis advertised the position a second time in March of 2024. The consultant conducted an extensive search both locally and nationally, reaching out to more than 300 applicants. 5 individuals applied for this position, and Rob Hartman was the top-ranking candidate as scored by the audit committee and the county manager. Rob has a Bachelor of Business Administration degree from the University of North Florida with a focus on accounting, and a Master of Accountancy degree from the University of North Florida as well. Rob worked as a senior auditor at the University of North Florida and audit manager at the Colorado State University System. Rob has designations of Certified Internal Auditor and Certified Fraud Examiner, and he also has over 10 years of combined financial and audit experience. I'm requesting that the board formally vote to appoint Rob Hartman to the role of Buncombe County Internal Audit Director effective July 15th, 2024.
Commissioners, this comes as a recommendation as well from the audit committee.
Motion to hire Rob Hartman as Internal Audit Director.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have several other amendments to address, and Melissa Moore and John Hudson are here to help us with these, I think. Hey.
So I have 2 ordinance for you on this budget amendment. Each year, the Government Accounting Standard Board releases new statements. 2 years ago, GASB released statements 87 and 96 that cover our long-term lease and software agreements. So at the end of every year, we have to make adjustment accounting entries. They're non-cash, but because there is an expenditure on offsetting revenue, it requires a budget amendment. So the new standards treat these software and long-term leases, the new accounting treatment acts as like a capital asset. So we're making entries that start as a revenue and an expenditure, and then there's adjustments that move them over to your balance sheet as debt. For the first year, that is for the whole long term. It's almost like treated like a loan, if you will. So it's the full year, the full value of the multi-year lease or software agreement. And so those are the adjustments that are brought at year end to make those accounting entries. So the ordinance for the general fund amendment is 5.2 million, and the ordinance for the solid waste is 1,343,000.
Motion to approve budget amendment.
The second.
We need separate votes on each one. Yes.
Oh, I think so, yes.
Okay, so the motion is to approve both of the
Both the
budget
budget
amendments.
amendments.
All right, for the general fund and solid waste enterprise fund. We have a motion and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. And next, budget amendment on the North Carolina Education Lottery. I'm sorry, budget amendment to address functional spending first.
Thank you. As the county general fund expenditures are budgeted by function, the budget office monitors and projects spending as the fiscal year comes to a close. This budget amendment shifts contingency dollars, unused interfund transfer budget, and aligns salary budget to support reduced turnover in the cultural and recreational function, that's parks and libraries, and to support public safety, the main driver of which is to support 911 communications staffing contracts and agreements to maintain service delivery. The changes between functions total $900,000 and require no additional funding.
Is there a motion?
Can you just explain that a little bit more? Exactly what's happening with that one, please?
Sure. So as we budget by the functional area, and so we have two functions that are running up close to the budget, the total budget for those functional areas. So the cultural and recreational function where we did budget for some of the salary lapse. They haven't had the turnover that we'd expect to see. So we want to move some existing budget from other functions to the cultural and recreational function. And then in public safety, where we've supported 911 with outside contracts and for staffing, is the main driver for why we're seeing increased expenditures in public safety. So we're moving dollars from the human services function and also interfund transfer budget, which we're not going to be transferring out of the general fund to align so that we stay within budget at the end of the year for the functional level.
Okay, so basically, we needed more in both of those. Okay,
Yes.
and we just need to move. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now the lottery.
So this budget amendment adopts two education lottery projects and the public school building capital lottery fund approved by the Department of Public Instruction for $750,006 for security hardware upfit at Buncombe County Schools and $65,000 for design of North Buncombe High School tennis courts. And the board approved submission of these projects at the May 7th meeting.
Motion to support and approve this request.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and debt service amendments.
This series of budget amendments establishes budget to pay for costs of issuance and debt service charges for the 2024 limited obligation bond and general obligation bond issuances where there is not enough budget to accommodate these charges. This budget amendment will realize revenue in the amount of $361,000 in the School Capital Needs Fund and $60,000 in the Article 46 AB Tech Fund, while appropriating fund balance for $10,000 in the Woodfin PDF Fund. No additional budget is required in the General Fund or the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund.
Can you remind me what the PDF Woodfin Fund is?
So the PDF stands for Project Development Financing. And so some time ago, the county co-signed with the town of Woodfin to finance a project in Woodfin through what they call Project Development Financing. And the way that this financing is done is that your collateral is future property tax revenue that you expect to get after the project is done. So these have not historically been successful in the state of North Carolina. So since we co-signed with the town of Woodfin and approved this some time ago, we need to help assist on payments back on the debt. And we have a dedicated fund for this purpose.
So how long will we be doing this?
I don't recall maturity. Do you? We'll have to get that.
I'll have to get back to you on
That's
that.
fine.
I think we're over the hump.
2028? Okay.
We'll verify.
Yeah. If you-
It right when the Great Recession occurred, 2008 and 9.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And the last budget amendment is to accept the Just Home grant funds for 2 grant-funded positions from the Urban Institute in coordination with the MacArthur Foundation.
I'm going to invite Chloe Donahue up here to speak about this.
Good evening, Commissioners. So I'm bringing back the Just Home grant opportunity. So we presented about this back in May. This is a MacArthur Foundation initiative through the Safety and Justice Challenge. And it's an additional opportunity that Buncombe County was invited to apply for. We were selected out of 10 sites to potentially pursue this opportunity. It's co-managed by the MacArthur Foundation and the Urban Institute, and the Urban Institute is serving as the technical assistance providers for the grant. And then, as we talked about before, it's complementary with a lot of our county goals and initiatives. So this is just a reminder of who the project partners were that we applied for the grant with. And so the lead partner for the grant opportunity was the Buncombe County Planning and Development. And then we have several other partners who are serving in different roles because of their expertise in criminal justice, housing, community engagement, and evaluation. So this is a reminder of the planning period, which is what the grant is for. So it's 9 months. It starts with a community engagement planning process, during which we would create a shared decision-making process that would help to ensure continuous engagement of folks with lived experience throughout the whole process. That would then build to a target population analysis and a gap and barrier analysis. And all of the information and outcomes that come out of those processes would then inform a housing investment action plan, which would contain a set of solutions, a budget for and potential costs for those solutions, as well as identifying the ways in which we would use investment funds from MacArthur to support a housing solution. So to allow us to do this planning period, we had to submit a budget. And in that budget, we asked for the salary and benefits for one full-time project planner and one part-time grants manager. We also asked for funding to support community-based organizations and their staffing needs if they're involved in the project, as well as funding to compensate community members with lived experience throughout the 9 months. We also applied for funding to support our evaluation partners, because evaluation is a big component in the implementation period. So we would be doing some, like setting the stage for the implementation period and creating an evaluation plan. And then we also applied for funds for consulting fees, meetings. We'll have to travel to some of the other Just Home sites, and office supplies, some of our standard components. So just to reiterate, the implementation period, there's still some unknowns about this, but depending on whether the Housing Investment Action Plan is approved by MacArthur and the Urban Institute, we would then be invited to participate in the implementation period, which would be 18 months. That would then unlock the $5 million in program-related investment capital, which is a loan that could be used for a housing project. And it would also there would also resources for continued support for a local program manager, supportive services for clients, and procurement of goods to help sustain the project, as well as evaluation costs. And during this implementation period, we would be executing that Housing Investment Action Plan, launching the evaluation process, and creating a sustainability plan. So since May 21st, when we came and presented to you all, we have received a letter of intent from the Urban Institute, which laid out the amount of funding that we applied for in the grant was accepted. And so that then allowed us to initiate a request for board action process with our budget department. Our staff also participated in the Just Home kickoff call, during which we learned of the other sites who are in cohort 2, or who were invited to be a part of cohort 2, as well as learning a little bit more about the expectations for the planning period and some of the activities and support that we would be receiving from the Urban Institute. And then we have not received the subaward agreement yet, but Urban Institute is working on it, and we expect that'll lay out some more details that our staff is expecting around procurement rules and just timelines and things like that. And then in anticipation that you all were going to be hearing this about this grant opportunity, we've started talking to some of our other departments who would be involved in the next steps if you all approved this grant. So we've been communicating with Justice Services about aligning with the other SJC grants, and how do we not recreate the wheel for our our grant management processes, as well as talking to budget and talking to HR about the positions and things like that. So kind of setting the stage. So with all of that information, bringing to you the request for you all to consider approving staff to move forward with the subaward agreement for the Just Home project with the Urban Institute in coordination with MacArthur Foundation, approving a budget amendment in the amount of $230,118, which is the amount we applied for in the grant, as well as approving the addition of 2 funded positions for the 9-month planning period, 1 full-time planner and 1 part-time grants manager position.
Just a question on the, because we've kind of got into this before when we do these grants with these new positions, and then when that goes away, and people are concerned about losing that staff. So I'm kind of curious what the plans are for that, and especially around a part-time grants manager. Is that not something we can just utilize those who are already writing grants to do that rather than hiring a new part-time?
On staff.
We don't have any?
All departments write their own.
Okay. And there's,
What was the first thing you said? We don't have.
She was asking about grant writers. We don't have grant writers and staff. Every department writes their own. But this position is not mostly about the writing of the grant, it's the management of overseeing that grant that's coming in. And for every grant position we have, we do make it clear that it goes away. That's why you're saying the 9-month planning period. So whoever takes this job part-time, it really is part-time for 9 months. That's so they know that coming in.
okay.
And MacArthur has indicated that they would extend operational resources into the implementation period if we moved forward into that period. And we did get some clarity that that budgeting process for the implementation period would happen before the end of the planning period. So hopefully there would be some time to figure out extending a position.
Chloe, did you say that the if we get the implementation award funds between 2.5 and $5 million, did you say that those are loans?
Yes, yeah, it's a repayable loan.
We would have to repay it?
So we don't necessarily have to be the ones to be taking on the loan. So we have Mountain Housing Opportunities as part of this project, but we could also bring on other partners to be to receive the loan fund. And then they could then be responsible for that. So several of the other sites there's several structures that we could do. It could be, we take it on, it could be a quasi-governmental organization, like Land of Sky comes to mind, or it could be a nonprofit developer.
Okay. So let me ask, I think it's, this is still a project where it's like not at all clear to me like what actually is going to happen, right? So I understand the need, right? Like people are going in and out of the criminal justice system, and housing scarcity or not having, reliable housing is part of that dynamic, right? So you're sort of trying to break the cycle. But let me ask this. Right now, I understand there's going to be this planning process, but do the folks who are involved in it at this stage have like some fairly specific ideas for what the solutions might look like? Or is that, at this point, just sort of like completely blank board that's going to be developed during this planning process? Because it would just be a little bit more helpful to kind of understand, like, what are some of the potential things that $2.5 to $5 million might get invested into?
Yeah, so one of the partners that we brought on is the SJC Community Engagement Subcommittee. And so they have been talking about housing. It's been talked about in our Justice Services, Diversion Services group. So there's definitely a lot of ideas already with the partners that we would be bringing on to this project. But one of the main components, as you may have seen in the planning period, is that the first step is community engagement planning, and how are we bringing on folks with lived experience to help drive the decision-making process. And so there's definitely ideas within existing groups, but we would want those, the solutions that come out of this planning period to be reflective of.
Could you share like some potential solutions? Like I realize there's this process, but like there's like examples of what might happen.
Yeah. So two of the projects that got shared during the kickoff call, one of them is in the city of San Francisco, and they worked with one of their local community development finance institutes to take on those funds and then invest in a dormitory-style youth-focused project that would have an on-site counselor. So that would be like a more supportive, permanent supportive type of housing solution. But then Minnehaha County, which is where Sioux Falls in South Dakota, they worked with their redevelopment commission in their community, which is a quasi-governmental organization, to blend the funding into a LIHTC project for 80 units. That would be like a supportive housing project.
So
Housing is at the table with that type of thinking.
So there's a good likelihood some project or projects will get constructed to address these like unique housing needs in the community.
Yes.
Okay, that's very helpful, thanks.
And we're hoping to learn more. They said they would share all the pro formas and everything with us from the first cohort, and so that'll help us to have more clarity about what the project could be.
Okay, but just to be clear, these will be loan funds, these will not be grant funds. So ultimately, whatever they're invested into will need to be some kind of project that generates some type of revenue over time in order to repay the loan.
Yes.
Okay.
And in addition to the program-related investment funds, there's also operational resources from MacArthur to help extend a position within the county or to help support operations within the project. And so that's undefined right now because it's going to be dependent on the budgets that we submit through the Housing Investment Action Plan. But they have indicated there's funds beyond the loan funds.
Very helpful, thank you.
I guess it kind of goes without saying, but as you get that information, or if you don't mind sharing some of that, just so we can visualize what type of supportive housing you have in mind, because I know there's a ton of things out there, but having some scope for what project we're putting people on might
Definitely.
solidify it a bit for us.
We can share they haven't sent the kickoff call PowerPoint materials, but we can send those along.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, thank you, Chloe. Okay, we have board appointments. Strategic Partnership Grants Committee. We interviewed some great folks this afternoon. Thank you to everyone who applied. And Al, I'll start over on your side. Let's just all go down and identify the person that we'd like to support. If one person gets a majority, they'll be appointed. If we don't get a majority, we'll talk more about it. All right, Al.
D.D. Styles.
This is the appointment you're talking about, right?
For strategic partnership.
Okay.
Strategic.
D.D. Styles as well.
D.D. Styles.
D.D. Styles.
Unanimous.
Okay. Okay, yeah, and we also have the Mountain Area Workforce Development Board.
I'll make a motion. I think it's 2 reappointments, correct? Okay, I will make a motion to reappoint Trudy Logan and Rodney Embler.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Any reports on boards and commissions that commissioners serve on? All right, great. I've got a couple of announcements. July 2nd, meeting of the county commission has been canceled. July 16th at 3 p.m., the county commissioners briefing will be held at 200 College Street, room 326 in downtown Asheville. July 6th at 5 p.m., the county commissioners' regular meeting will be held at 200 College Street, room 326 in downtown Asheville. We do have a need for a closed session. Mr. Free, would you explain the purpose?
Going to General Statute 143, 318, 11A3. Need a motion to go in closed session to discuss a legal matter and advise of possibilities in that regard. Don't foresee any action back in open session, just direction from the board at this time.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And when we are done, we will take no further action. We'll just adjourn the meeting.